Let's be real, y'all. The world is a lot right now. Every day we're getting ambushed by breaking news, hot takes, and everybody pretending that they got it all figured out. But when things are moving this fast, it's easy to miss the big picture. Well, there's finally a place for it all to slow down. A place to talk about what's happening and how it's impacting our lives. A place to talk about politics, culture, music, art, relationships, the stuff that makes us laugh, and the stuff that makes us think twice. Welcome to the Marc Lamont Hill Network. Here, you can watch shows like Conversations, where I sit down with some of the biggest names in pop culture, sports, and politics for real, honest dialogue.
Would Jesus approve gay marriage?
I think Jesus would encourage any kind of love affair if it was honest and sincere.
Or you can join me for After Class, a live Q&A for Patreon subscribers, where you can ask me anything. In sports, there's nothing a Philadelphian hates more than the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, I boo Dallas fans in person. Well, just about anything. If you really want to nerd out, you can catch me on Office Hours, where I do intellectual deep dives with some of the world's most brilliant, creative, and controversial minds.
There's a letter in the Schomburg Center where Malcolm X wrote a letter to Elijah Muhammad. He said, we have to get our prayer game up.
Last but definitely not least, you can catch my wife Melissa and me for In This Thing Together, where we have honest talks about life, love, family, and community.
Were you happy after our first date?
I think so. I think so.
so.
Honestly, I can't remember how it ended. Did we have sex?
All of this and a whole lot more on the Marc Lamont Hill official Patreon. Subscribe today.
I am in 1 second. Yes, I am ready. I'm going to read unfortunately, from the cell phone when I'm doing it, but it's okay. Do what you got to do. Yeah. Yep. Michael? I would like them to turn off those lights in the back. And, there's a couple like that guy has got to turn off the lights so that the lights are shining on the stage and not on these guys. It's going to be too. It doesn't look right. It's not. Yeah. It's over here. These guys over here. What's that? They need the lights for the. Good evening. Thank you all for being here. It's really an important topic, and it's a lot of people wanted to be here that couldn't be in this room, and hopefully they're able to get on the live stream to watch this. We have two people tonight who are the thought leaders of their respective sides of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And when I'm saying leaders, I mean the top leaders of these arguments on each side. Both of these men have appeared and testified in front of the UN. I want to tell you, and written books, many books. They come from wildly disparate backgrounds, and they bring that, I believe, to their, that informs their worldviews. You all tonight are the judges of this debate. And all the people that are watching online are the judges of this debate. And my goal here, our goal here, the organizers, is to hopefully get beyond the slogans and dive a little deeper, and maybe a lot deeper, into the substance of what is going on. And I think once we do that, my hope, once we do that, is that understanding of some sort can happen. So, and maybe even more than understanding, actual peace someday. So I'd like to tell you about each of the speakers without further ado, and I'll try and bring them out here as soon as I can. Mosab Hassan Yousef was born, excuse me, was born in Ramallah in 1970, in the West Bank in 1978. His father, Sheikh Hassan Yousef, was one of the founders of Hamas, which is, as you know, an internationally recognized terrorist organization responsible for countless suicide bombings and other deadly attacks against Israel, including the most recent attack on October 7th. Inextricably linked to Hamas, Mr. Yousef, he faced intense horrors in his youth, including a 27-month imprisonment and torture. However, his worldview shifted after discovering that all along Hamas was relentlessly torturing its own people. Mr. Yousef embarked on a 6-year journey that put him at odds with Hamas, endangering him, his family, and leading him to seek political asylum in the United States. He has since become a vocal advocate for peace and has conferred with world leaders on Middle Eastern affairs. His unique perspective, having been a part of Hamas's elite senior leadership, offers profound insights into the cycle of violence within the region. Mr. Yousef is also an author. As you might know, his memoir, Son of Hamas, has become an international bestseller, and it has inspired an award-winning documentary of the same, actually of the name, The Green Prince. Mr. Yousef's mission is to provide a voice for freedom, peace, and a new path forward for future generations that are caught in this cycle of violence. And Marc Lamont Hill is an American academic, author, activist, and television personality. He is the professor of urban education at CUNY College Graduate Center in New York City. He hosts the Upfront program on Al Jazeera, English, and VH1's VH1 Live, as well as reunions for Basketball Wives. He also serves as the BET News correspondent. And he was previously the first host of the syndicated television show Our World with Black Enterprise. He's the host. He is a host of HuffPost Live and a political commentator for CNN and Fox News. In November 2018, he was dismissed from his position at CNN after facing criticism for remarks made before the United Nations on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. CNN did not specify a reason for the dismissal. So, without further ado, I would like to welcome in Mr. Yousef and Mr. Hill. All right, so this is the game plan for tonight's debate. I will be asking a question, and oh, I didn't tell you who I am. I'm David Ruda. I'm an attorney in San Francisco. I'm also a UC Berkeley graduate, a rhetoric major at the time, and it's really wonderful to be back here at the birthplace of free speech and academic rigor and actually getting into issues rather than just throwing around convenient names. So we're going to do that here tonight. And I'm going to be, so the ground rules are, I will be asking questions. It'll be approximately 9 questions if we have the time. And for each of these questions, I'm going to turn to one of these two men and ask them whether or not they agree with that, yes or no, basically. And then to justify that with evidence and whatever they see fit as supporting their argument for yes or no. It's a kind of an Oxford-style debate. That's 2.5 minutes each side. So once, for example, if I called on Mr. Yousef, he gets 2.5 minutes. There's a shot clock down there, so you'll be able to keep track if you're running out of time. Vida down here will let you know if when you have about 30 seconds, if you seem like you're not looking at the clock. But otherwise, we'll try not to interfere. After the first 2.5 minutes each, there'll be 2 minutes rebuttal from each side. And then we'll move on to the next topic. Okay? Okay, good. All right, so without further ado again, we're gonna start with the first question, and Vida, I'll let you know when to start the clock, okay? The first question: what is Palestine and what is Israel? I would like Mr. Hill to first respond.
Okay, thank you. Didn't know that question was coming. Thank you. Just curious, how many people here identify as pro-Palestinian? Okay, just making sure. All right. Seeing if it was a home game or not, you know?
Looks like you got a representation there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, that question, it was added here by me just because I felt like we needed to define. I think it's a good way to get into it.
I think it's an interesting question, and it's a complicated question in some ways. If we're talking about at this very moment, Israel is a nation. It is a country, is a nation state. It is recognized globally as such. Palestine, after this week, may have a different designation based on the UN Security Council's decisions, but ultimately, Palestine's a little more complicated. Palestine right now, when some people say Palestine, they're referring to the occupied territories. When some people say Palestine, they're referring to all of historic Palestine, meaning they're referring to everything from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. Some people are referring to the pre-1967 borders. When people say Palestine, it can mean different things because as a legal category, it's complicated. If we're talking about Israel, it also can be complicated. Again, in 2024, what Israel means is very different than what Israel would mean in 1947 or in 1800. And I think we would be historically dishonest if we were to pretend that Israel only begins in 1948, both as an idea, but also as a cultural and religious and spiritual commitment to Jewish people around the world. Israel's meant lots of things to lots of people throughout history, from the Torah until this moment. And so that's a very professorial way of answering a question, right? I don't want to give you a clear legal definition because I think the words are too complicated. And the terms mean too many different things. But as a legal category, if we're talking about the recognition of Israel, Israel is a nation state and has been since 1948 when the US made the first call to recognize Israel as such. And I imagine that very, very soon, hopefully, we'll see a Palestine that is also recognized as a clear, unequivocal, unambiguous nation state that will be due and given all of the same affordances of any other nation state.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. I'm not going to ask you how many of you are pro or anti, because it really doesn't matter. I start the answer of what Palestine is and what Palestine is not. Palestine was never a country. Palestine is not a nation. Palestine is not ethnicity. Palestine is a colonial term created by the British, and the lifespan of Palestine was less than 30 years. It was exactly 25 years. It was the British mandate of Palestine. Not Palestine as a territory, but the mandate's name was Palestine. So some political gangs led by Yasser Arafat, criminals, con artists, used the term to just create hostility to a legitimate nation that is Israel, that is before history, that has faith, that has language, that its people have been resilient against so many attempts for ethnic cleansing. And they have survived. The most resilient nation on earth, in fact. And the nation that has contributed to humanity more than any other nation. And what's called Palestine wants somehow to replace Israel. It's totally dependent on the destruction of Israel. It's a very broad term. And it's been used by so many criminals who have been using children as fuel for their revolution. Corrupt revolution, the most corrupt revolution, adapted the name of Palestine as a cover. And now I see many gangs around the world adapting the same term. So Palestine is non-existential. It's as simple as that.
Okay, thank you. Um, 1:30. 2 minutes, yes. Go ahead.
So you'll be shocked to know that I disagree. First, to say that Palestine was never a country, sure. But the idea of the country or the nation state is a relatively new one. It's only in the last 100 years, particularly after World War I, that we began to develop things like the League of Nations. We moved from empires to actual nation states. There have always been nations, but not countries, right? Do we say Rome wasn't a country, right? There's a difference between nations and countries, between nations and nation states. And so, yeah, I agree with you. Palestine was never a country. It's just not the point. Second, Palestine certainly has existed before the Yasser Arafat and certainly has existed before the founding of the PLO, presumably is implicit in your claim about Yasser Arafat. If you read, for example, 1911, there's a newspaper that was created by Arabs who called themselves Palestinians at the time. And they were responding to these waves of Zionist immigration. And you know what they named their newspaper in 1911? You can look this up for yourselves. They called it Philistine, right? Philistine, Palestine. And there were conversations about being Ahad Philistine. There were conversations about being the people of Palestine. There were conversations about Palestinian culture. I agree with you. There hasn't always been a Palestine, but everything is invented. It's like when black people celebrate Kwanzaa, people say that's a made-up holiday. Yeah, all holidays are made up, right? Like, it didn't fall out of the sky, right? Nations are built. Nations are constructed. Cultures are constructed. Language is constructed. Over the last 150 years, we have seen the development of a Palestinian culture. I don't disagree with you that Palestinian culture is a response to the emergence of Zionism in many ways. That's true, but that doesn't make it less real. You and I just spent the last 10 minutes outside speaking Arabic, and we weren't speaking Fusha Arabic to each other. We were speaking what? Palestinian Arabic. So there is a language, there is a culture.
Okay,
Thank you.
Go ahead.
The reason I said that Palestine never existed as a country, because the entire narrative of apartheid, colonialism, occupation is understood as Palestine used to be a country, then the Zionist entity came and occupied that country or that territory, which is false. And the false narrative, believe or not, my observation my entire life, that leads eventually to violence. So this is why I'd like to define Palestine. What is Palestine? If it's not a country, then we are on the same page, and we can take the conversation from here forward. Most Palestinians who claim to be Palestinians are just Arabs. This is their ethnicity. I am an Arab. I was born Arab. Yasser Arafat established PLO and Palestine in Egypt, and he wanted me to take that identity. Hence, I refuse. My birth certificate says on it Jordanian, as hundreds of thousands of people from the West Bank were born Jordanians. The ones who were born in Gaza were Egyptians. And when the PLO was established, they did not include the West Bank and Gaza actually as their aim for liberation, because the West Bank was Jordanian and Gaza was Egyptian. Then the Arabs had their opportunity to build an Arab state, and they missed the opportunity. So to come today and represent Palestine, free Palestine, from the river to the sea, what does that mean if there was no Palestine?
That was a rhetorical question.
It was. It has to be. If it was, I don't know, but
Fair enough.
It has to be.
By the way, and when I lean and sit back, it's because I have some leg problem. I didn't know we'd be standing for 2 hours. I have an Achilles issue, and so if there's a stool, I'd love one.
If you need a chair, that's fine.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah, if somebody could get
I
it.
don't
Can
want
you
to look.
stand for a little longer?
Yeah, I'm okay, but I'm okay as long as I can do this.
Yeah.
I don't want to look less cool than him. I just don't want you to think I'm disengaged.
I thought you were doing it out of respect to let him take the floor. But
Yup, that's
there you
bing.
go. All right. So, we'll set the clock again. Okay, next question. It's going to keep on going along here because we got a lot to cover. Question number, I'm going to call this number 1 because the other one is 0. Number 1, can there be an end to this conflict between Israel and the Palestinians before the Palestinians return the hostages held in Hamas's tunnels? Said another way, Israel's unilateral ceasefire right now, would it end the current conflict? I'm going to start with you again.
Okay. I'm only going to address the second version of that, right? I'm asking for clarity. Okay. Because I don't necessarily, I don't concede that there are hostages in tunnels right now. I don't know where they are. I'm not saying they're not hostages, be clear. I'm just saying I don't know where they are. Thank you.
Let's rephrase the question to be hostages held in Gaza.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Can we reset the clock just so I don't run?
Yeah, we can reset it. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. Here's the thing. I believe that peace is always predicated upon justice. And justice has, therefore, to be a precondition of peace. So I don't think there will ever be peace in the way that we mean it. Not just a ceasefire, but an actual end to the word you're calling conflict. I don't use the word conflict because conflict implies something slightly different, which is like two equally positioned powers who are disputing over a matter. I consider this a colonial occupation. And I know you'll completely agree with me on that. But I do think that there's no way to have justice or peace without the return of hostages. I believe that the taking of hostages is a violation of international law. I believe that it is a violation of Islamic law. There's a difference between hostages and prisoners of war. These are civilians. These are innocent people. I don't believe that you can kill civilians, and I don't believe that you should capture civilians. That's kidnapping. That's hostage taking. And I can't imagine any peaceful resolution that does not include the return of all hostages. And I have always consistently decried, critiqued, challenged, dismissed the legitimacy, the moral and legal legitimacy of any hostage taking or any killing of innocent people. That can't be the only thing we do now. There are multiple things on the table that have to be preconditions for justice. That, for me, would include an end to what has been the longest military occupation in modern history. That would require an end to the siege in Gaza. That would require justice. But absolutely, I think it's unreasonable and naive to believe that there will be any peace if there are still people who are held hostage. Right now, that number is, some people say 130, some people say more. The tragedy of it is the number's getting smaller, not bigger, and the reason it's getting smaller is because people are dying, which is tragic. It's horrific, and we should do something about it.
So your answer to the question of would Israel's unilateral ceasefire right now end this conflict? What's your answer, yes or no?
Would Israel's unilateral ceasefire end this? When you say this conflict, though, do you mean the war in Gaza? That's what I'm saying. If you mean the war in Gaza, sure.
No, I mean
the overall conflict.
The overall conflict that was generated from October, you can call it from before, but October 7th initiated this current.
What I'm saying is those are two different answers. The
campaign and the
give me 10 seconds and I'll explain. I'm not trying to be difficult. What I'm saying is, if you're asking the current post-October 7th military struggle that's going on between these two parties, yes, I think a ceasefire would stop that. But it would not stop the overall Israel-Palestinian conflict because that's a deeper, more, I won't say intractable, but it's a more complicated question that won't stop simply if Israel stops shooting.
I'm referring just to Gaza.
It won't even stop the overall, the crisis in Gaza precedes October 7th as well. But if you're asking me if the armed battle between Hamas and its associated and its affiliate groups and the Israeli military right now would stop with a ceasefire, I would say yes. Yes.
see, my approach to a solution in the Middle East is a different approach, different than the politicians and the journalists and the experts and the thinkers of age. Because I'm a son of that conflict, and I lived the pain of the first intifada, the second intifada. I witnessed so much bloodshed that there is a volcano inside me that is about to erupt. And I don't see any other solution but the truth. So for example, allegations like occupation. Oh, this is false. Occupation of what? According to the United Nations, not valid. This is not my authority. I speak on the authority of my experience in that land. Before the first Palestinian Intifada, things were very peaceful. When Hamas and Muslim Brotherhood decided to start violence, things changed. Things changed for everybody. We started with checkpoints, fences, violence, and things went out of control. It's like a snowball and just kept rolling. In 1967, the Arabs decided to destroy Israel, to annihilate the Jews. Israel was outnumbered. The Arabs lost the war. Israel captured the West Bank, Sinai, that includes Gaza, and the Golan Heights. The Arabs initiated the war. Israel finished the war and they won the territory, which was British mandate before. Before the British mandate was Ottoman Empire. It was not a Palestine, it was not an Arab state, it was an Islamic state for 400 years. So now, why Israel would give this land back if it was captured in war? There are winners and there are losers. The Arabs were losers. Israel was the winner. They are entitled to that land. It's as simple as that. It's not occupation.
So the question was, would Israel's unilateral ceasefire right now end the current military and conflict, I'm calling it, which I think it is an accurate word, because there's rockets going both directions and bombs going and so forth, and there's hostages and so forth. Would that end the unilateral ceasefire? Would it end the conflict?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Without eradicating Hamas completely, without the Palestinians dropping the idea of violence and accepting Israel's right to exist, the cycle of violence will continue for eternity.
Okay.
So I'm baffled by part of your response, my dear friend. You say that there is no military occupation. And you also simultaneously say that after the first Intifada, there are checkpoints and troops and all this other stuff in the West Bank. Those troops aren't Palestinian troops. They're Israeli soldiers. They're Israeli military. Now, everybody in this room may believe that that needs to be there. Everybody in this room may believe that Israel needs security and they need checkpoints and they need soldiers and they need all this stuff, and that the only way Israel can be existentially safe is to maintain a military boots on the ground control in the West Bank and in Gaza. Let's say you all believe that. That only explains why there's a military occupation. But to deny the fact that there's a military occupation is simply to deny the obvious. It would be like me saying there's no police outside, just because I don't want there to be. Even the Israeli government acknowledges that there's a military occupation. We may disagree about Gaza, but to say that there's no military occupation in the West Bank to me It's bizarre to me, with all due respect. There simply is. From 1948 until 1967, there was a Jordanian occupation, as you pointed out. The Jordanians gave way to the Israeli occupation. The Egyptian occupation in Sinai and in Gaza gave way to the Israeli occupation. Golan, Syria, back to Israel. There is an occupation. Your second point that you made is, you said if you take land that you win in a war, you won it fair and square and you get to keep it. That's a fair characterization, which said that's fine as your personal philosophy, but that's illegal. The international law, the acquisition, I mean, y'all can laugh, but acquisition of land by force is not legal. I can't invade your country, take your land. Are you saying that the Russian invasion of Ukraine is legal? That Russia can annex Ukraine and take everything? You can't annex land by force. You absolutely cannot. That's simply a fact.
We're gonna give you another chance to talk
Okay.
about that. So you'll get more opportunity. Don't worry. So this question is kind of morphed into a different subject, but it's part of the give and take of this debate. I'd ask that the audience try and keep. You can have as much commentary as you want in your head. So it's because we want to keep this. One of the things my job is here is to keep it staying on time, staying on topic, and staying civil. So part of the civility is listening to these guys speak and letting them speak. Okay.
So basically, if it was Jordan, then best case scenario, based on your theory, it would be occupation of a Jordanian territory, not Palestine, because there was never Palestine in the West Bank. So this occupation you're talking about is a matter between Jordan and Israel. And thankfully, there is peace and security arrangements between Jordan and Israel for a long time. The Jordanian king is one of Israel's greatest friends. When I say the presence, this was the outcome of the Arab defeat in the 1967. And we did not see the soldiers. Prior to the first Palestinian Intifada, my grandfather used to ride his donkey all the way from our village. It would take him 5 days all the way to the coast, to the Mediterranean. Nobody interrupted him. Jewish families used to come to our family. My father, a founder of Hamas, used to serve them food and show them some Arab hospitality. Jewish people used to come to our markets. We used to go to their markets. I used to go to the zoo, to the beach. No checkpoints at all. Gazans were able to come to Ramallah. We were able to go to Gaza. There was no fence. There was not even one checkpoint. It was one family somehow. The Jewish families regularly came to our village, to our house. And I remember just less than 6 months before the Palestinian Intifada, the first one, my father serving food to the Jewish families. This was the reality before the first Intifada. Now, when it became violent, stone throwing, stabbing, especially stabbing, mass shooting, suicide bombing, things got complicated and we start to see more soldiers and IDF and all that for security measures. Before that, we did not see them. They were just civilians. Everybody was civilian.
All right. Next question. Golda Meir once said, if the Palestinians put down their weapons today, there would be no more violence. If the Jews put down their weapons today, there would be no more Israel. Palestinian supporters have sometimes claimed that the October 7th massacre was caused by Israel's conduct and policies towards the Palestinians over the last 75 years. The question is Hamas's October 7th slaughter of Israeli civilians Israel's fault? And I would like you again to answer it. Start off.
Yeah, I'm going to stand up when it's time to answer the question. I'm just in some physical pain.
You need anything?
Just to sit down when I'm not
Okay.
talking, yeah.
No problem.
I should play the Powerball. My number keeps getting drawn here first. Is Israel's, ask the final part of the question again.
Is Hamas's October 7th slaughter of Israeli civilians Israel's fault?
No. No. You might want to wait till I'm done before you clap. You might regret this. I don't think that if we begin from the place that it was both legally and morally improper to kill civilians, then I would not blame civilians for their own death any more than I would blame a rape victim for what they wore or for how they behaved. I could have a severe critique of Israel, but if I begin from the place of saying that this is a moral atrocity to kill civilians or to capture civilians, then no, I wouldn't blame anyone for that except the people who committed the harm. Where I think we all agree on that. That's a full stop. However, there's another piece to this that I want us to talk about as well, which is how we get to these conditions. History doesn't begin on October 7th. The Hamas attacks on October 7th were entirely foreseeable. They were entirely predictable. And it's not because of some natural violent tendencies among Arabs or Palestinians or among Hamas or anything like that. It's because these are the conditions of occupation. These are the conditions of siege. In 2006, Israel doesn't leave Gaza. Israel redeploys its troops to the borders of Gaza. Israel still continues to control Gaza by land, air, and by sea. It controls the population registry. It controls the electromagnetic sphere. It controls what goes in and what goes out, the food that goes in, the nutrients that go in, all of this stuff. There's no airport in Gaza. There's never been a moment of self-determination inside of Gaza. And so when people live in unlivable conditions, when people live in conditions of extraordinary violence and extraordinary deprivation, it is entirely predictable and foreseeable that they are going to resist this type of pressure and this type of violence. That does not excuse killing innocent people. That does not excuse kidnapping innocent people. It is, however, predictable, and we have to be smart and nuanced enough to have those two separate, distinct conversations.
Thank you.
Very familiar with the narrative of a victim. I lived this most of my childhood, believing that we had to face massacres and genocide and ethnic cleansing, and there is occupation, and Israel is the root cause of our problems, all the problems, our honor killings and child abuse and domestic violence, discrimination. We blamed everything on Israel. But today, as a grown-up, I cannot believe this narrative anymore. What we need to educate the Palestinian people history, how things originated. And all the lies, turning defeats of our forefathers into massacres and genocide was not very helpful. It just created an entire generation of hatred rather than give them the truth that we were defeated. Let's move on. Hamas had an option. If they dropped their weapon and recognized Israel's right to exist, there wouldn't be a situation in Gaza. The Arabs had the opportunity in 1948, equal opportunity like Israel, to declare their independence. But they remembered after 5 major wars, later, in 1988, 40 years later, to declare their independence without defining even the borders. We are not Arabs. The children are not Arabs. I mean, the children are not Palestinians. We are not Palestinians. The children are just children. And the situation in Gaza, the situation in the West Bank, frankly, as son of that region, I tell you that it's self-inflicted pain based on the poor choices of our leadership. And those are the greatest enemy of the Arab children in that region. And this is why I stand here. I'm not a pro-Israel, anti-Palestine, but I know the pain of a child of that region. And I don't want this cycle of violence to continue for eternity while the con artists worldwide taking advantage and burning the children for status and for money. This is where I wanted to stop.
Do you have a rebuttal?
I always have a rebuttal.
Yeah.
I don't think it's one of those weird things where if I don't have a rebuttal, it's like, ooh, we got owned on the internet.
By
But
the way, you don't need to use, neither of you need to use all the time that you have if you don't need it. Because we can use the time.
I think we're both talkers enough to use it.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is I don't know if we need 2 rounds for this because I think I'd rather, like you, I think there's other questions we could go to. I think we don't disagree that much on at least half of it. I disagree with everything you just said, but I think that'll come out. And it's a good thing, and that'll come out in subsequent questions.
Maybe can you just summarize what you disagree with?
So my disagreement with one is this idea that Arabs simply lose wars and then blame everybody else, and that all the problems of the Middle East are to Arab failure. That would be as unreasonable as saying that every problem in the Middle East is due to Israel's failures, right? I just, that's not how politics works. That's not how human nature works. No one is blameless in any kind of struggle over liberation, any kind of struggle over land. And effectively what you're saying is that it's all the Palestinians' fault and that Israel has made no mistakes. That's what you're saying. Is that fair? Is that a fair characterization of what you said? Okay. And so that's where I would disagree. You've said several things historically I disagree with. I disagree first with the premise that Israel is simply responding, right? The Six-Day War was not, it was even Israel at this point, and even the most prominent Israeli historian suggested Israel's actions were a preemptive act of self-defense, not that they responded. It's not that Arabs attacked first and Israel responded. That's not even Israel's narrative. So you're actually articulating a more fundamentalist narrative of Israeli self-defense, and even Israel is. Israel doesn't say that. They say that we fought in preemptive self-defense, which again, international law, which I know some of y'all don't rock with clearly, but by the groans, it doesn't allow for that. I mean, again, we can look at international doctrine, we can look at convention, and see that that's simply not the case. Arabs, or in this case specifically Palestinians, of course they've made mistakes. They've made bad deals. They've pushed back against deals that I think, in retrospect, they may feel differently about. There's been divides among leadership. There's all kinds of mistakes that I'm sure every people in every nation around the world may claim. But fundamentally, even when you go to the starting point that you begin with in 1948, which is not where I would begin, the Palestinians' decision to not declare statehood was not a response to irresponsibility. It was a response to the UN partition agreement, Resolution 181, which was fundamentally unfair, as was the Peel partition, as were the Clinton Accords. And you and I may disagree, or all of us may agree or disagree about how the Palestinian people responded to those deals, but fundamentally they were unfair and unjust.
Thank you.
I agree with you. They were unfair because the United Nations gave the Arabs more land than they gave to Israel originally. Definitely unfair because 55% of the territory from the river to the sea was given to the Arabs. Instead of the Arabs taking the opportunity to declare their independence, they declared war against Israel. The Jews did not reach the point in 1948 to declare their independence for cheap. They had to fight. This is the history that Palestinians or Arabs are not educated about. The Jewish people paid blood in order to achieve their independence. Many Jewish people died in the process of fighting against the colonizers. So now to accuse Israel of being the colonizer of a political entity that never existed, then blame Israel for the suffering of the Palestinians or the Arabs who did not grab the opportunity to declare their independence and coexist with Israel. Instead of investing their energy to establish an Arab state, they invested their entire energy to destroy Israel. And this is the biggest mistake of the Arabs.
Next question. Is Zionism, which for our audience is a movement that started in 1897, originally for the reestablishment of and now the development and protection of the Jewish nation is in what is now called Israel. Is that ideology, Zionism, a colonial ideology? And is Israel a colonial state? I guess it's up to me, right?
I'll just go.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to him. You.
You know, the allegations of colonialism, this is another false narrative. And we have to stop the false narrative in order for us to break the cycle of violence. My philosophy, in fact, it's not only philosophy, it's the truth that falsehood lead to violence eventually. Because this is a snowball. It keeps rolling. Then it becomes believable. Then it spread hatred. Like right now, to believe that Israel and the Jewish people did not belong to that part of the land, and they just came and kicked out, ethnically cleansed the Arabs, as many parrots been repeating without knowing anything about that region. 400 years of Ottoman occupation, systematic ethnic cleansing of the Jewish people from that region, to the point that no Jews left in that land. Then it was not coincidental that immediately after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, the Jewish people start returning to that point. Displaced from Europe, from the Arab countries, from everywhere after the atrocities of the Holocaust. People migrate because of drought, because of war, because of flooding, because of natural disasters. This is the natural flow of a human society. This is not about the United Nations laws. It's about the universal laws. When people are struggling for their very existence and they come for a refuge from human brutality that killed millions of them. And they have a history there. Artifacts, archaeology, Bibles, long history. While the others who don't want them to exist have no evidence of any relation to that territory. And still Israel say, and the Jewish people, we can coexist. We can coexist. Israel say, this is our historic land. But they don't have a problem coexisting with all other ethnicities, including Arabs, Druze, Christians, all type of people. And this is Israel today. It's a living example. You see the diversity of the human society in Israel, while you don't see it in the Arab societies.
Wow, he said so many things. Where do I start? You're arguing that there's a Jewish presence in the region that goes before the 20th and 19th century. Before history. And I'm saying, yes, of course there is. Relax. I'm saying there is. You spend a great deal of time arguing a straw man. I agree. There's a long-standing, uninterrupted Jewish presence in the region. I don't think anybody disagrees with that. You're framing that as if that's the dispute. We all agree with that. Do we? And no, but here, okay.
Well,
It's cool. I don't feel away. I just want y'all to get it out.
no, I don't want you to get it out.
Oh.
Go ahead.
You
can get it out afterwards.
That's not the argument. I disagree with you on some dates. You know, I don't think the Zionist movement begins. Actually, let me take one step back. It is important to mark what we mean by Zionism. We're talking about political Zionism. Not cultural Zionism, not religious Zionism, not spiritual Zionism. Which is why I disagree with the idea of saying, there's no Palestine until there's no country, so it's not real. It's like there was an Israel before there was a country of Israel. Similarly, there's a Palestine before there was a country of Palestine. That's not what it's predicated upon. People say next year in Jerusalem for centuries. That's a real thing. And that's not what people are mad at. That's not what people are resisting. What people are resisting is the wave of political Zionism that begins at the end of the 19th century. Not in 1897, which is the beginning of the World Zionist Organization, then called the Zionist Organization, but in 1882 at the beginning of the first Aliyah. And that first Aliyah was an important one, a largely unsuccessful one, but it was a powerful one. And it wasn't a response to the Holocaust. Hitler hadn't rose to power when the first Aliyah begins. It was a response to Jew hate around the world. It was a response to the pogroms in Ukraine, to Poland, in Russia. We could go back to the 15th century in Spain. There's never been a moment where Jewish people have been safe around the world. We have to be honest about that. There's no dispute about that. Again, we ain't got to argue about that because we're on the same page. The question is, when you make a safe haven and when you create a safe haven, what does it look like and at whose expense does it come? We can say it's not colonial, but that's not what Herzl said. He said colonialism is a colonial adventure. If you read The Iron Wall by Zev Jabotinsky, Vladimir Jabotinsky, when we talk about sort of move toward revisionist Zionism, he says it's colonial. There was a department of colonialism inside of the early Yishuv. So even the Zionists said it was colonial. What they said was that the colonialism was necessary, not that it wasn't. And the reason why it's a problem is not because Jews came to a place where they never were, but we will acknowledge at the end of the first Aliyah, the percentage of Jewish people it was about 5%. And by the time we get to 1939 with the British White Paper, the numbers have gone up. I'm just getting my time back from the Groans. And so at that moment, that was not a natural demographic shift. That was an intentional effort to bring people in, which is not the problem. The question is, how do people come in and at whose expense? And that's what I hope we talk about.
Okay, can I just have, before you end, I would just like to have you clarify in one sentence, what is the definition of colonialism to you?
I can't do that in one sentence.
Okay.
And I don't want you to feel like I'm violating the rules.
All right.
I'll cover it in my next answer. I'm not being difficult. I want to give you a good, thorough answer.
There was not only a state of Israel prior to 1948, there were kingdoms, Jewish kingdoms in that region, and the ruins still actually erect, and they are witnessing to the presence and the history, the Jewish kingdoms in Judea and Samaria up to today. The currency is still the same. The Israeli shekel is more than 5,000 years ago. It's the same Bible, same history, it's the same lineage. It's not the Jewish people's fault that they were displaced so many times and sent to exile because they were anchored in their own truth. This is something I respect very much about the Jewish people. And this is why I choose to stand with the Jewish people now, because their identity is solid. And nobody can argue against it, even though many forces tried to annihilate them throughout the history. They continue to be resilient to time and space. Hence, Israel is not limited to a territory. It's not only from the river to the sea. It's an amazing phenomenon. And when they return, whenever they are in that land, they erect some magnificent civilization. Every time. Then the world conspire against them somehow, and they want to destroy it. From Babylon to the Egyptians, to the Romans, now to the Arabians. Before that was the Turks. So do we really want to measure this by how many Jewish people were there during like a certain period of time? They have been there. And so many forces could not erase them off the map like Iran's trying to do today.
So you're trying to say that Jewish people are resilient? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're going to get to that.
No, but it's my response. He went first this time. You're just used to me going first. Ping pong. It's my.
I think you had your second.
No, I haven't.
Am I wrong on that?
No.
Please, my apologies. I don't mean to cut you off.
I know you don't. I know you don't. You're arguing that Jewish people are resilient and that they've always been there, and that Jewishness isn't limited now to the Israeli nation state. Correct? It seems to be exactly what I'm saying too. Again, we're arguing straw men. I'm saying that a people's nationhood isn't limited by a nation state. I just want you to have that same energy for Palestinians, right? You can be a people without having a physical nation state. There are thousands of nations in the world and only 132 nation states. So lots of people don't have countries. I agree. I never said that you measure people by how many people are in the region. The question was this colonial? And the answer is yes. And what I'm saying is Theodore Herzl, who I would argue, you may disagree, I would argue knows something about Zionism, says it was colonial. Zev Jabotinsky, who I think knows something about Zionism, Chaim Weizmann, who knows something about Zionism, they all said it was colonial. It's only now in the modern era that we're saying that it's not. And the reason why I resisted to answer your question initially was because I'm going to be very specific. It's a very particular type of colonialism because Israel was not a colonial power. They had the authority and the backing for a long time, up until about 1936, maybe 39, depending on how you think about it, of the British. It's a settler colonial project. A colonial project is to come in and exploit people, to come in and dominate. A settler colonial project is where you come in to replace the people who are there through processes of extraction and erasure and removal. You're saying, yeah, they've had the same language, but modern Hebrew is a 20th century construct, right? Tel Aviv is a modern construct. That's not a bad thing. We need modern constructs. But let's not pretend that the creation of these things was not a direct response to the erasure of Palestinian people, Palestinian culture, Palestinian life in the region. That is what makes it settler colonial. They settled and they colonized. And again, nobody who was actually doing the colonizing denied it. They literally had a department for it. They had description of it. Jabotinsky and Herzl explained how and why they were colonizing. And now we're just pretending that didn't happen.
So if I'm getting you right, you're saying that a settler colonial project is what Herzl, of replacing the people there in the land, is what their colonialism was. That's what they meant by that colonialism.
I'm not saying that's what they meant. I'm saying that's literally what they said. They literally said that initially Jabotinsky, if you read the Iron Wall, says, what? I'd like coexist. I'm not trying to get rid of anybody. But he also acknowledged that no people, and he gave other examples of colonization around the world. He said no people is just going to let this happen. They're going to fight back. He said the success of this project hinges upon the response, not on what we do, but on what the Arabs do in response. And he said, then he told you what they were going to do. If you read the work of Benny Morris, who might be, I would argue, the preeminent Israeli historian, he said that the Zionist project was dependent upon what? Transfer, which is a fancy, warm and fuzzy word of saying expulsion. Okay. Which he says. I'm not speaking for him. He says it.
Of time. Thank you. In 1948, just before and immediately after Israel's declaration of independence, an estimated 700,000 Palestinians left their homes in the state of Israel and took their keys, expecting to return to their homes after the Arab armies said that they would destroy the new state of Israel. And they did not. Israel successfully fought off those armies, and the Palestinians settled in camps, now built up neighborhoods in West Bank, Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan. The Palestinians call that evacuation the Nakba, or Great Catastrophe. Is the Nakba the responsibility of Israel? And I will start with you, please.
The Nakba, the ethnic cleansing, the genocide, all this type of allegations is the failing attempt of the loser, that wants to turn defeat into something else. It's a culture that is based on honor and shame, not right and wrong. It's very shameful, and it has been for the Arab leaderships to just accept defeat. And if you don't accept defeat, you can never know victory, by the way. So they call it a Nakba. It's a disaster. But who's responsible for that disaster? Was it the Arab miscalculation when Israel was extremely outnumbered and they came with this inflated Arabian ego, thinking that they are going to make the Jews into a food of the fish of the sea? They used to say, you know, Arabic, تجوع يا سمك البحر. This was the slogan, marching towards to annihilate the Jewish people. It was a big shock. My grandmother was asked to evacuate her farm as hundreds of thousands of Arabs left their farms because the Arab armies told them, you must evacuate. After we cleanse the land of the Jews, you can return to your homes. I don't need the United Nations to come educate me about anything because my grandmother is an eyewitness and she gave me her experience. This is what they told her. This is why she left her farm, because she was afraid to get caught up in the war. And the Arabs lost the war, and my grandmother never returned back to her farm. But you know what's amazing? My grandmother started her life again in the village of Bir Zayt near Ramallah and was able to start over and be very successful, sent all her children to get education. And what's remarkable about her? She never spoke anything bad about Israel. She never used the term Nakba. She never used the term occupation or colonialism. For her, it was a loss, and I think deep in her soul, she knew that the Arab armies misguided the entire population, Arab population. They weren't Palestinians at that time. So when we talk about Nakba, catastrophe, whatever they want to name it, it's just a concept. Who's responsible for that, in my opinion? The Arab arrogance.
The Nakba, when we talk about settler colonialism, to quote the settler colonial theorist Patrick Wolf, it's never an event, it's a structure, it's a process. The Nakba isn't just about 1948, it's not just about 1947 to 1949 over the course of war. It's about a series of processes that led to the ultimate expulsion of the Palestinian people. But if we want to speak specifically about the expulsion of the 770,000 people, again, you've acknowledged at the beginning that you don't necessarily rely upon scientists and law and thinkers and historians. But no, I'm not saying that derisively. I mean, you're saying that you're relying on a very particular narrative, but historians dispute that narrative. Israeli historians dispute that narrative. I could show you 1,000 Palestinian historians that dispute this narrative. You say, well, yeah, they got a nickel in that quarter. But the very idea of the new historian in Israel, whether it's Benny Morris, whether it's Avi Shlaim, whether it's Ilan Pape, who y'all might not be as in love with, all of them acknowledge that the expulsion of 700 to 770,000 Palestinians was not because they all said, we'll just leave, wait for this, war to end in a few days and we'll come back to the house with all the Jews gone. That's simply untrue. I'm basing that not on my own opinion, but on historical records, on oral histories, on now archaeological evidence. There's not really a lot of dispute among Israeli historians that this happened. Now, there are people like Benny Morris argue, not that it didn't happen, they're saying it had to happen. That if we had let the Palestinians back in, they would have been disloyal, they would have been violent, we couldn't have had a stable country. You might agree with that claim, but we can't just pretend that it's not true just because we don't like it. We can't pretend. It would be like me saying October 7th didn't happen, that 1,139 Jewish people weren't killed. It happened. Regardless of what we think about it, it happened. These are historical events. Deir Yassin is one of the most violent and horrific massacres of the 20th century. The Deir Yassin village was a depopulated village, but it was also a massacred village. The children who were left from Deir Yassin were put, as you know, in Hind el-Husseini, what's the word, Maitam, an orphanage in Jerusalem because all their parents had been killed. Many villages had been burned down or depopulated. There were numerous reasons for the 770,000 people to go. Some was expulsion. Some was fear. Were there some Arab leaders that said, leave and we'll be back soon? I'm not saying that didn't happen at all, but that was not the overwhelming reason for the people leaving. They left because they were killed. They were intimidated. Some of the more dominant Arab leaders left. There were lots of reasons, but it wasn't just because they didn't want to. But even if they did, and this is my last 2 seconds, they still have a right to return. Just because you don't like them doesn't mean they can't come back. There are rules to this.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think if anybody has the right to return, is the Jewish people who were forced to leave their property from all the Arab countries, and they were ethnically cleansed. This is the very definition of ethnic cleansing. When you force people, you give them 24-hour notice to leave their property, their jewelry, everything they had, and depart on a boat into the unknown. This is what the Arab countries did. And by the way, I didn't say that I don't adapt science. What is more scientific than first-hand experience, direct perception, and observation? Those are the basis of science. Did I say that I was anti-science? But if your scientific theory contradicts with my first-hand experience, then your theory is invalid. Then you keep coming back to the point of colonialism, occupation, and Palestine. I told you there is no such a thing as Palestine, and I mean my word when I say there was no such a thing as Palestine. You cannot prove it. It never existed. And if it did exist, give me the name of the Palestinian president at that time or emperor. There is no such a thing. Palestinian, Yasser Arafat, the Palestinian revolution, they borrowed a colonial entity as their national identity. This is the joke about what's so-called Palestinian. And this is why I don't agree to myself to be called Palestinian. First of all, I was born as Jordanian. This was the nationality of my birth. And I dropped that. But my ethnicity, we are Arabs. Since when we became Palestinians? So you are representing the case as there was such a thing as Palestine, then the Zionists came and wiped them out. And now they have the right to return. Well, they were never there. And when they were evacuated the region, because they wanted the Jews to die, those who stayed in the region, they are still until now. There are 2 million of them. And Israel did not return the favor. This is a very important point. Israel did not return the favor by displacing the Arabs within its own borders, like the Arab countries did with the Jews. Ethnic cleansing happened in the Arab countries. I met some of these people from Egypt, first-hand people. I met them and they told me their stories. Israel did not give the Arabs 24-hour notice to leave the territory after the 1967 war.
Thank you.
I'm going to respond to the parts that I think are germane to the question, just because there's a lot of points in only 2 minutes. You're saying that you're juxtaposing your firsthand experience with my abstract theory. No, you weren't there in 1948. I wasn't there in 1948. You're saying that I agree with you. And there were 700,000 other grandmothers there who also have accounts. And so rather than going on individual anecdotes, because I'm going on, I've done oral histories with the very same grandmothers that you have, right? Neither of us were there. And what I'm saying is the people whose job it is, the experts who have collected these narratives, as well as the legal documents, as well as all the evidence shows that the 700,000 people didn't just leave thinking that they were going to have a quick mollywopping, to use a technical term, and then come right back. That's not what happened. There's just no evidence of that. And just continuing to say that there was doesn't make that true. I agree with you that there were Jews in Egypt, actually Egypt less so, but Jews in Arab countries around the world who were kicked out. I agree. But again, you're arguing a point I never made. I never said they weren't. What I'm saying is just because Jews were kicked out of these countries, which is wrong, doesn't mean that we replicate that behavior somewhere else. We have to hold the same standard. I agree 1,000% that a Jewish person in many Arab countries around the world was isolated. Remember, 20 minutes ago, I said Jews have never been safe anywhere in the globe, especially as a minority. I agree with you. That's not where we're disagreeing. The question is, once you begin the formation of the Israeli nation state, do we do the same thing again? And those people who left, you're saying that those who stayed in the borders are Israeli citizens. Yes. The problem is the people who left, those 700,000 people who left, which again is indisputable by Israeli historians, even the most ultra right-wing Zionists acknowledge that they were kicked out. They just say they should have been kicked out. You're like the only person who's saying they weren't kicked out. They actually were. They're just disputing about why. But those people, even those people who were kicked out, they're in the refugee camps. They're in the West Bank. They're like your grandmother who now is in, you said Ramallah or Birzeit, right? They weren't allowed back in because the only way that you can have an ethno-state is with a demographic majority. And you can't have a demographic majority if you have more Arabs there than non-Arabs. And that is why expulsion, according to the Israeli historian Benny Morris and others, was necessary.
Thank you.
And how do you explain the 2 million Arabs who are Israeli citizens today? Where did they come from? And why, if Israel demonstrated ethnic cleansing against Arabs, okay, and forced the people to leave, then how today we have 2 million? 2 million. This is about 25% of the Israeli population. And they are a fundamental part of the Israeli society. They are very proud Israeli citizens. By the way, they will not change their national identity with any other national identity. If you tell them you want to become Jordanians or Egyptians, they would laugh at you. So where did these people come from? If it was a systematic ethnic cleansing, why would you miss 2 million people in the process?
We'll give you like a minute or so.
Again, these are straw men. You're making it sound as if I said that they got rid of everybody or that people popped in out of nowhere. What I said was, to be clear, in order to maintain an ethno-state or to create one, you need a demographic majority. To create the majority, these 700,000+ people were expelled. Again, that is not historically disputable. You might dispute on the why or the if or the shoulds, but the fact that it happened is indisputable. And yes, there are 2 million, give or take, people who are Arab citizens of Israel. And they do account for about 19% of the Israeli population. I don't dispute that. Now, you and I will disagree about their full involvement and full participation inside of the Israeli government. Do they have full citizenship rights? Absolutely. But there's more to citizenship than just what we call, what do you call it? There's a particular technical term, but basically, there's different levels of belonging in the same way that as a black person in the United States in 1953, I had full citizenship rights, but there are things I couldn't do, right? Similarly, if you were to talk to someone from Beta Israel, which I've done, I've spent the last 10 years in South Tel Aviv, in Jaffa, talking to Beta Israel, Ethiopian Jews, and they have a different account. When I talk to Mizraim, some say, we love it. We're full citizens. Others have different things. If you go to idala.org, and there are more than, I believe now the number is 58, might be 60 laws that are discriminatory to non-Jews in Israel based on ethnicity, based on this thing that you're talking about. So it's not that simple. It's more complicated than that.
And just to be clear, you're saying that what happened with the 700,000 was an expulsion as opposed to an evacuation by the Arabs in Israel.
Yeah, if people leave and you don't let them back, that's an expulsion, yes.
Well, no, I'm talking about when it first happened, were they expelled at the time when they were told by Arabs? Or by whom?
What I'm saying, again, I laid all that out. I said there was a small number of people who were told by Arab leaders to leave and come back. Okay. But I said many left because of the massacres. We wouldn't say Deir Yassin was a...
I understand.
Yeah.
Thank you. Next question. Thank you. How are we all doing? Everybody okay? All right. Next question. In 2006, Palestinians in Gaza overwhelmingly voted to elect Hamas as its leadership. For 18 years after that landslide win, Hamas has remained their political leadership. The Hamas Charter, the published mission statement of Palestinians' leadership in Gaza, explicitly states their goal is the extermination of every Jew in the region, and I believe it says in the world as well. The question is, I don't mean to be presumptuous.
No, but you're stating things as fact that aren't factual.
Okay.
That's not fair, though.
Okay.
You can't introduce something as a fact and then ask me to respond to a thing as if it's true when it's not. It's actually unfactual.
Then we will revise the question in response to that, and I will say this. The Hamas Charter, which is the mission statement of the Palestinians' leadership in Gaza, states goals. Does the Hamas Charter prove that a substantial majority of Palestinians in Gaza want to ethnically cleanse Israel of Jews and commit Jewish genocide?
So, by the way, I wasn't fact checking you on your Hamas thing.
It's okay.
No. You just said that an overwhelming majority of Palestinians voted for Hamas. Do you know how many Palestinians voted for Hamas?
Well, it was certainly a majority.
It was not a majority. You're wrong. It was 43%.
Continue.
But do you understand how saying that was a majority would give the impression to the audience that more people voted for them than not? That's not my opinion. That's a factual error.
If you want to support that fact, then please do.
Okay, 43% voted for Hamas. 43% is less than 50%. 50% plus 1 would be the majority. It was a plurality. Most Palestinians did not vote for Hamas as a matter of fact. If you want to look it up, Google it right now. You got all these fancy machines.
Just to be clear, I did Google it
Understood.
From Wikipedia, and I saw a different.
What you're looking at is, I'd love to see that. But
Continue.
but Palestinians in Gaza voted for Hamas at 43%, right? Let me hear me out. More than half of the Palestinian population is under 18. The last election was in 2000, and what, it was 18 years ago. Yeah. That means that not only did most Palestinians not vote for Hamas back then, almost half of the population wasn't even alive when there was an election. So an not infinitesimal, but a very small percentage of Palestinians right now even voted for Hamas. So let's just start. That's just not true. The second part of your question, though, is two things. One, the Hamas doesn't literally say anything about exterminating Jews around the world. It just doesn't. Again, that's just not true. But the original Hamas Charter does talk about war, and you're right, and it does address Jews in particular. Now, where this gets complicated and interesting is two things. One, I'm assuming you mean the first charter, not the revised charter, because it's a little strange to me that we would be basing Hamas's politics now, not on the current charter, but on an old charter. The old charter made it very clear that their war is against political Zionism, and it's a nationalist movement, and that they don't have an issue with Jews, and that they took issue with anti-Semitism. Let me be very clear. I don't support Hamas. I don't think Hamas is an effective leadership model. I don't think Hamas is a moral leadership model. I'm not defending Hamas. I am simply defending an untruth that was just presented as if it were a fact. If it were up to me, Hamas would not be in leadership. If it were up to me, Fatah would not be in leadership. If it were up to me, none of the leadership models would be in leadership because they haven't been effective or moral. And every time I've been given an opportunity to engage them or speak to them, I have challenged them on this. So please don't turn this into I'm defending Hamas. But what I will say is the Palestinian people are not fighting against Jewish people as a religion, as an ethnicity, or as a global diaspora. What they are struggling against is Jewish as a national identity and as a proxy for Israelis. And this is why it's very, very complicated with Zionism, because what Zionism has done is conflate Judaism and Zionism. And so when you pull out your Israeli ID, for those who have it, your nationality is Jew, right? You have a citizenship as an Israeli, but your nationality is Jew. Yours would be Arab if they ever gave you the blue passport, right? Yours would be Arab. Someone else would be Druze. And so when what they're struggling against is a colonial occupation. They're not worried about Jews in Egypt or in Brooklyn or in, where are we? San
Berkeley.
Francisco. I'm sorry, I've been long night, I've been flying for like 10 hours. They're worried about specifically Israel.
Thank you.
Look, I'm not going to argue if it was a majority or a minority, and I don't need to go back to 2006. Why going so far? Let's just look now, where not only the Palestinians or what's so-called Palestinians, the Arabs and the Muslim world behind Hamas after October 7. And instead of differentiating themselves from this barbaric attack that did not differentiate between an infant or elder, between a Thai worker or an Arab worker, killed people indiscriminately by the name of resistance against the occupation and the right of self-defense, etc. The Arabs choose to side with Hamas and give Hamas legitimacy and give Hamas support. And they made this about Palestine instead of looking at things for what they are and say, you know, this does not represent us. This was the moment of actually voting for truth. And they failed big time. And I think it could be one of the biggest failures up to now. If the Arabs stood and said, this is a savage group and what they did was crossed all the lines, I would be very proud of the Arabs who were born in that region. But it looks that most of them, the vast majority, support Hamas in their hatred against Israel. Now, is it a matter of worldwide or not? Do we need to wait until Hamas manifests? And by the way, Hamas is the Muslim Brotherhood. What I would like to see from the Palestinian people, what they call themselves Palestinians, they can be Palestinians eventually if they insist on this identity, a colonial entity, as their national identity. I will not argue with that. I think it's disrespectful to them, first of all. But if they insist on it, I say, then no problem. How about you establish a nation? Agree on a leadership. Stop discrimination against the black people. Stop honor killing. Give women equal rights. Stop child abuse. Stop using children as human shields. Stop gambling with the generation's future to achieve political agendas. And stop living in the diaspora as a billionaire in luxury while the people living in despair. Show me a constitution. What so-called Palestinians don't have a constitution of their own. It's borrowed from Jordan. And honor killing in this constitution is not a crime. A father or a brother would kill his sister or his daughter, they are not imprisoned. Stop discrimination against the Jews and accept Israel's right to exist. If we have those foundations, then we are talking about a nation. And I don't care what you're going to call that nation. Then we have a legitimate leadership that we can negotiate with, and we can achieve our goals.
Clarifying question. Does Israel have a constitution? Yes or no? I'm just curious.
Are you being funny?
Yes or no? Does Israel have a constitution? It's an awkward moment. They don't. So I just want to start there. So there are many critiques you've just offered of Hamas and of Palestinians and of societies in general that I would probably agree with you. We should stop honor killings. We should stop female genital mutilation. We should stop corrupt leadership. We should stop all those things. I think everybody should have a constitution. Just for your edification, Israel does not have a constitution. Also, you may not know this. It's kind of very deeply kept secret, but Netanyahu might be looking at some criminal problems too. Itamar Ben-Gvir has been through the criminal legal system, convicted. There's lots of corrupt leadership everywhere. We could look at a guy here with orange hair. I'm just saying, let's not act as if there's only one place that has corrupt leadership. There's corrupt leadership everywhere. I agree with you that I'm sorry, we got so far off the field. What was the initial?
Yeah, we're talking about.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Yes. This idea that if you just acknowledge Israel's right to exist, Hamas, that everyone will play ball is also just, it's inaccurate. It's historically inaccurate. Palestinians, long before there was a Hamas, Palestinians did acknowledge Israel's right to exist. They first did so in 1967. That's what UN Resolution 242 and 338 were about. Yes, I'm going to move up. I'm going to give you each moment. You know how you started in 1948 with your grandmother in the Nakba? I'm doing the same thing. I'm starting here and going there. So when you look at, before the Oslo Accords of 1993, another moment, ostensibly at state building and peace, they asked Arafat again, do you acknowledge the Palestinians' right to exist? For him, it had already been dealt with in 242 and 338, but he said it again, we acknowledge it. In fact, they had to write what they called letters of mutual recognition, where the PLO, which at that point had been identified as the sole representative body of the Palestinian people, did what? They said, we acknowledge Israel's right to exist. And you know what Israel wrote back? We acknowledge the PLO as the representative of the Palestinian people. And you know I'm telling the truth. So the point here is...
I didn't say that.
Yeah, we were talking about the Hamas charter at one point, right?
Right.
And
but you realize he went all the way off the field and he went an extra 2 minutes, so I'm trying to address his point so it doesn't look like I'm not engaging him.
And we also were talking about the,
Yeah, so everything I'm saying makes sense.
If
you hear me out, you'll understand what I'm saying. I'm saying that he's saying that Hamas's issue is that they won't acknowledge Israel's right to exist. And I'm saying there have been every moment in Palestinian history where Palestinians have acknowledged Israel's right to exist. The outcome has not been what he's suggesting it would be if they would only acknowledge Israel's right to exist. So what I'm saying is logically consistent. There's a clear through line here. But what I'm saying is if we move forward to now, because I'll fast forward back if you want. The idea, again, that Hamas is unilaterally or uniformly endorsed by all Palestinian people, I think is a misreading of Palestinian civil society at a moment where they haven't had an election to know. And you also don't hold people accountable for election choices that they made. That was Al-Qaeda's argument. Literally, was that American people deserve to have the World Trade Center blown up because we voted for policies and people like George Bush that created this awful world. What an awful idea to say that we're responsible, that our children should die because of the election choices we made. But this election choice wasn't even this cycle. It was 18 years ago. Those babies that are dying in Gaza right now had nothing to do with Hamas's election. So no, I'm not going to hold them accountable for that. What we need right now is is a ceasefire and give people an opportunity to have fair and free elections and then see what they decide.
I'm going to ask you both at the end a little bit about your visions of the future, so we'll get to that at the very end.
Okay.
Yeah, because I really want to hear it. Yeah.
I'm sorry to say this, but we're not going to allow Hamas to have a second chance. They must be removed from power. And I am into this war until the end, no matter what it takes. I lost everything in this war. And I have nothing else to lose. And we will not stop. I'm part of it. This is my war against the devil who has been using these children you're talking about as human shields, who has used them first war, second war, fifth war, and this time we're not going to allow them to repeat this. War crime, it's a capital crime that is requiring capital punishment. And this is not according to the United Nations or to the US government. I said this from day one in the war, that this is according to the laws of the desert. the constitution of the desert. It's written in a different plane. So whether you like it, you disagree with it, this is what's happening right now. Hamas must be removed from power by the authority of the universe. So let's not cry for the children while we are not considering how do we remove Hamas from power. And the ceasefire serves only Hamas, because we did this 5 times under the international pressure. And what happened at the end? Hamas gained more power, more money, and now they doubled down by taking hostages. There is no ceasefire. Ceasefire will happen when Hamas is removed from power completely. And the Palestinians or the Arabs, the Arab children, are free from Hamas. My philosophy, my individuality, I say the Arabs must be free from all concepts, including the concept of Palestine. I will never empower the concept of Palestine at the expense of the children, especially when there are so many con artists using this terminology to keep burning the children as fuel so they can become billionaires.
Thank you. Okay, we're at that point where I think we should switch it over. As much as I want to continue asking questions, I'd like to allow the audience to ask some questions. So Vida, if you could grab a mic. Well, no, he's going to need that mic. Okay, you can use mine. No, you can't do that. Here, you can. I'll pass this one to you. Yeah, please.
Yeah, so my question's for Mr. Hill. I mean, first of all, I think that your definition of colonialism is so off base that I don't know where to begin, because colonialism requires a mother country. What you were referring to is you said it's people moving in to replace a native population. People moving in, there's a word for that, it's called immigration. Specifically, there's another word for that, repatriation, in the case of the Jews, moving back to their historic homeland. But aside from that, when you're saying that Jews essentially came in to replace a native population, we've heard that before. The Jews will not replace us. We heard that in Charlottesville. The Great Replacement Theory, your rhetoric is essentially echoing the rhetoric of white supremacists, of neo-Nazis, again, white supremacist tropes like the Great Replacement Theory. How does that make you feel?
Can he stay? Come back, young man, if you don't mind. Could you come back so we can have a dialogue? Thank you. So, because I want to make sure I don't want to misrepresent your points. Again, you said like 4 or 5 things, and I'm getting older and don't remember all the things. I'm not kidding. I got a 2-year-old, so my brain works different. So you said my definition of colonialism is off base. What is colonialism?
So I would define it as a symbiotic relationship between a mother colony and a puppet state. You could also call it a parasitic relationship, but I would say, yes, it requires a mother country.
Right, and I want to make sure you heard me right. I said I wouldn't define this as pure colonialism. I said that it would be settler colonialism, right? Settler colonialism. And my definition, and I didn't rely on my own definition. This is the scholarly definition. This is what experts on the topic define it as. Now, it doesn't mean you have to agree with it, but I just want to be very clear that I didn't pull one out of my head. As I said, the colonial power, I said they did it with. I actually made the point that you're saying I didn't make.
Who's the colonial power?
Britain. Remember I said that? Y'all remember me said that. I said it's not a traditional colonial. I said Israel was not a traditional colonial power, but they did it with the support and the authority and the resources of the British. That's what I said. So
Balfour Declaration, that was 1917. They moved in well before that.
Right. And again, you and I don't disagree on that, right? But if you remember also what I said, if you hear what I actually said, I said the first Aliyah was unsuccessful, right? The first Aliyah was before the Balfour Declaration, right? Oh, I'm sorry. No, but I'm just saying, I just want to make sure I would be very clear.
Tel Aviv was founded before the Balfour Declaration.
Say that again?
Tel Aviv was founded before the Balfour Declaration.
We agree. We agree. I never said it wasn't. My point is that if you look at when you began to see Palestinian resistance to the waves of immigration, it wasn't 1904 to 1914, which was the second Aliyah. It's after that. And it's interrupted by what? World War I. We don't disagree with that, but I mean, can I respond to the neo-Nazi part? Okay. Again, all settler colonial projects, whether it's United States, whether it's Australia, wherever, is about people coming in and leaving out parts of the indigenous population.
Okay,
Now,
briefly,
but let me be very. Let me finish the answer. I want you to respond, but now obviously I want to hear my brother here. My point is, if I were saying that Jewish people exclusively are trying to replace people, that would be awful.
You did say that.
I said the Jewish people are exclusively doing this? I literally just said Australia, the United States. I didn't just say that. Right, Australia, the United States, Canada. There are numerous settler, the 20th century is marked by settler colonial projects. We can't hold Israel to a lower standard, and we can't hold Israel to a higher standard.
No, this is an important distinction. Britain, Australia, all these examples used, these were colonies of the British Empire. Right?
Right, and this was a mandate of the British Empire.
No, it wasn't. Not until after World War I.
And that's, again, when we saw the Palestinian resistance to the waves of immigration. The 1882 to 1903, people weren't complaining about it. It was after the beginning of the Balfour Declaration, which acknowledged the right to a Jewish homeland, but at the same time was supposed to respect the civil and religious rights of the people already there. They didn't name Palestinians, but that's who they were talking about, obviously. But what we saw over the next 30 years was that very thing, the erasure of Palestinian people, the disruption of access to land. And that is why in 1939, they finally said we have to stop immigration. This is not about saying that there was a Jewish conspiracy or a Jewish cabal of power trying to erase people. No, this is about the British who didn't give a damn about Jews or Arabs, and they wanted what we call empire on the cheap. They wanted to control the region, and they didn't care who won. And that is why by the end of this period, the Jews were fighting the British. Okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to briefly say, look, I mean, you're talking about, I just want to briefly say one, really briefly. Well, you're talking about the British Empire, the British Mandate of Palestine, okay, that's 1917 to 1948, right? We had a long history of the Zionist movement prior to that, of people moving, had absolutely nothing to do with British Empire. They weren't coming from England, they were coming from Russia, they were coming from Eastern Europe. So I think it's really
I said the same thing. I said the same thing. I literally said they came from Ukraine, Russia, Poland. And I said they weren't, it was before the rise of Hitler, and I said they were running from the pogroms of Europe.
The Zionist project has nothing to do with settler colonialism, nothing to do with colonialism. You're conflating two different things. You're talking about the Zionist project, you're talking about Jews moving into the region, and you're conflating that with the British Empire and the British Mandate.
I'm not conflating it, we just have a different analysis. I respect your knowledge and understanding. I have a different analysis of what happened. I'm not confused or conflating the terms. I'm saying that what you're describing as an immigration wave, I'm describing as a settler colonial project because immigration waves don't displace other people. The immigration waves don't disrupt access to land or to make land public in a way that actually, ironically, dispossesses the Palestinian people. Immigration waves don't create ethno-states. Immigration waves don't depopulate villages. Immigration waves don't prevent the creation of a democratic project that is not contingent upon a particular ethnic identity that right now 20% of the people don't have, and at another time more people didn't have. It's not an immigration wave, and to call, and to me, to call a Zionism or Jewish travel to Israel at any form of fashion immigration is to disrespect and dishonor the fact that Jews have been there for centuries. You're not immigrants. I never said you were immigrants. I'm saying it's more than immigration. I'm saying it's more than immigration. You actually have a connection to the land. You have, you don't think that? Okay.
Okay, so this question is for both of you. Right, my name is Nadav. The question is for both of you. And that is, Qatar is a country that is not really near to Israel, but that, in my opinion, has been very involved in this conflict, particularly in Hamas. And I know, Mr. Hill, you work for Al Jazeera. They are funded by Qatar. This may be a little awkward for you, and I do apologize.
You don't, and it's not. But continue.
But has Qatar been a force for good or for ill in this conflict, for both of you?
I'll let him go first. I've been talking too much. Unless you want me to go first. Mine's going to take 30 seconds. Oh, I'm fine. Please.
Okay. You know, my knowledge of Al Jazeera and Qatar, you know, I don't call it Al Jazeera. It's the TV station of Sheikh Al-Qaradawi. You know, Sheikh Al-Qaradawi is the top leader of the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood control Al Jazeera. And I don't blame the employees who might not actually know, because some employees, it's a job. He's a journalist, he's doing a job. He may not know the back door to Al Jazeera that I'm very familiar with. And all the phone calls that happened from the West Bank and from Gaza to Al Jazeera, which right now is functioning as a Hamas weapon, inciting. Al Jazeera does not report news. They just spread propaganda, and they're causing lots of trouble. And I don't have respect for their journalism, even though I may respect journalists who work for the channel.
That was hurtful.
Qatar is playing a very dirty game, and it is going to fire back or backfire at some point. Sooner or later, Qatar rule of funding Hamas is going to be exposed, and as they invite violence, savages to take base on their soil, terrorism, famine, drought, destruction will arrive at some point. This is the law of cause and effect. And we will let time answer this to you.
Yeah. To answer the actual question, I think Qatar has been a force of generally of good, particularly recently in terms of attempting to broker a ceasefire. Okay, you disagree. I mean, I'm respectful to you all. I don't guffaw when you talk. I'm just listening. As far as funding Hamas, it's not that Qatar funds Hamas. It's that, all right, my source of this is the Israeli government. So you can disagree with the Israeli government if you want. But the Israeli government didn't want international funds to go to Hamas. And so what they did was they didn't want them to be the intermediaries for funding resources. And so according to the Israeli government, for the last, 15 years, is that right? Maybe more, maybe 20? Qatar has been a direct source to providing funds to Hamas, to providing funds to the people of Gaza as a means of sidestepping the corruption of Hamas. That's what the Israeli government says. You can disagree, but that's the argument. If you're asking me more fundamentally, do I have criticisms of the Qatari government? Of course I do. I have criticisms of many governments, but especially my own. But what I do, which is why it's not awkward, is I tell the truth. I tell the truth about the exploitation of labor in Qatar. I talk about the Kenyan wage workers. I talk about the Bedouin population in the Gulf, the people who don't have citizenship and whose labor is being exploited by the Qatari government. I talk about all those things. I tell the truth about it. I'm not afraid to. But if you're asking me in this exact moment, I think Egypt, Qatar, and Jordan have been attempting to negotiate a ceasefire. That's what I was saying is a force of good. Does that mean that I think Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is a great leader of Egypt? No. Does it mean I don't have critiques of the kingdom of Jordan? Of course I do. But in this moment, I'm saying that they're doing the job of brokering a ceasefire. But this idea that there's some secret connection that's going to be exposed between Qatar and Gaza is not true. It's a very public relationship, and Israel organized it. Now, right now, Israel may feel differently, and they may change the policy, but the policy is a very public one and one that Israel asked for.
Yes, well, it's not secret because entire Hamas leadership's base is Qatar in Doha.
Okay, but
What more
but
connection than this?
Just in the interest of truth, do you acknowledge that the Israeli government has publicly and openly advocated for Qatar to provide the funds to the people of Gaza? Do you acknowledge that? Just as a matter of fact. You don't have to agree with the why of it, but is that not true? And if you don't know, just say you don't know.
I am not talking about the money that came through the obvious
That's what
channels.
I was talking about, and that's what people are responding to.
I'm talking about the real estate that is worth billions of dollars.
If you're saying that there's some secret Hamas relationship with Qatar, I don't know that relationship. If there is, then it's wrong. What do you think I do? I work.
I don't need to provide evidence more than
Well, it was my turn.
Hamas leadership. Hamas leadership base real estate billions, banking, financial institution is in Doha. And Hamas is operating freely, and they get all the cover from Qatar, and this is why Qatar is complicit in Hamas war crimes. Whether people want to agree or not, it's not about Qatar gave money to the Gazan people. Yes, they give at the watch of the international community. But the question, how much money, how many billions they channeled from the back door to the Hamas leadership through real estate and through Islamic banking.
I wasn't engaging that point is all I'm saying. We were having two different conversations. I was responding to his question about the Qatari government's funding of the people of Gaza as a means of sidestepping Hamas. That's what I was responding to, and it's not absurd. It's just a matter of public record, fact.
We got that. All right. Let's get another student. Or
student, yeah. We're going to do student.
I have two questions, one for yourself and one for you.
Mark.
Sorry. My first question is there any hope to the Palestinian people to give up violence and coexist with the Israel in the future as a son of Hamas and as a Islamic Arab? Can you respond to this question? And my second question to you is the UN fair in the issue of the Islamic people when the China has concentrated camps with the Islamic people of the Uyghurs, and they didn't have any measure in the UN because China is bigger than the Israel, so power in the UN belong to the stronger. Can you respond to that question? Thank you.
He just gestured to me. Go, please, I don't care. I only went because he asked me to. I defer to you, my dear friend.
Look, even though I may draw, let's say, a dark image of the situation, I just want people to go back to the origins. If we are able to go back to the origins of this suffering and stay truthful and stop blaming the game of blame on the occupation and this and that, and to remove the false narrative, most importantly, the false narrative. Unfortunately, we did not educate our schools on the Holocaust, on the Jewish history, their suffering, and how things came about. Instead, they taught us denial and blame. And they taught us that we are the victims. The victim mentality is the greatest enemy of the Arabians who live in that territory. In my opinion, if we drop this card, play in the victim, see in Israel and the Jewish people as our cousins, as our partners, as our neighbors, that we honor them, that I don't want to say we love them. This is where I'm at right now. And I don't see any other reason not to love the Jewish people. Then you will find we can build bridges of understanding. It's not only about trying to fit a political entity, another country, like trying to fit two elephants in the eye of a needle. It is not about states as much as it's about understanding. If we have the understanding, then we could be a superpower that doesn't even know political borders. If Ishmael and Isaac can work together, united, and I don't see a problem with the Jewish people extending their hand to the Arab world, to the Muslim world, for how long? But the Muslim nations have rejected to accept Israel's right to exist. And I hope that this is coming to an end because we are getting closer to build bridges with the Arab world. Now, what so-called Palestinian situation? They need a governing authority that is not corrupt. They need education. They need economy. And we need to make sure that the children are safe. That the leadership, whatever, they cannot gamble with children's blood. This is enough of this. Because in my opinion, children are a lot more important than any political entity somewhere in the future. And if we don't show responsibility towards the children, why are we building this state? And up to this point, we haven't shown responsibility. We've been gambling with the children. Hamas and other Palestinian factions have been sacrificing children for political gain. This is a crime. If they showed responsibility, that they could actually love their own children. And I have a personal experience in this with my own family. Then we can construct things from there. But to say we want a state now before we show a nation, before we show responsibility, then we talk about equal rights, or show me equal responsibility. This is what I would like to see. I want to integrate this political gangs conflicting, killing each other, finding in Israel as a common enemy, blaming Israel on every problem they have, and never taking responsibility. I would like for them to stop this game and start taking responsibility towards their own society and integrate into a nation. If they can succeed in doing this, I don't see a problem of them becoming a superpower eventually, just like Israel. My personal opinion, that it should be a greater Gaza. We should give more land to the Gazans towards Egypt in the Sinai Desert. Whether we rent it, whether we buy it, and I think we should bring the Arab Gulf money and invest lots of money in tourism, in infrastructure, in education, and most importantly, building the economy, like having industries that we can guarantee their growth, because we don't want just to give them the money so they continue to be dependent. And this has been a fundamental problem, their dependence, that they're used to donation. Instead, I'd like for them education that goes very well with economy, that we integrate it and speed up the process by opening the global market for this, for whatever industry we decide. And I would like for this to be run by the private sector, not by governments. Because if you bring the United Nations or European Union or United States, it's still a government. But if you bring private investors will have to protect their investment. So they will have to guarantee that their investment will work. So it would be a cooperation between the private sector, between governments, and the locals need to cooperate. Up to now, we cannot manifest such a thing because we have a savage group that wants to ethnically cleanse the Jewish people, and this is their ultimate goal. They are not even concerned of the future of the people or building economy or infrastructure. They're building tunnels, spending billions of dollars to dig trenches and tunnels under the ground and drag the whole region to a war. This type of mentality cannot lead to prosperity, stability, and growth. So I hope that this will get out of the way. Hamas will be a history sometime soon. We don't know if we are ahead, by the way, a regional war. Today, Israel hit Iran, so we don't know how this is going to end. But it could be 2 difficult or 3 difficult years. Eventually, the Arabs of that region, they have the birthright to be in that land. but they have to coexist with the Jewish people. It's one family. All of us are one family. Enough of this madness.
What was your second question?
Yeah. Yeah. Why not? Why not? Why not them?
Right. We have to have the ability to address multiple things simultaneously. If we do not, we run the risk of doing two things. One, letting evil operate unchecked. And two, reinforcing a narrative that some people's actions are more legitimate than others. And therefore, some people are more legitimate than others. To give you, y'all, I'm gonna take that 50-second thing down. For example, it would be irresponsible of me to address what's going on in Gaza and not address what is probably the greatest human rights abuse right now going on in the world in Sudan. It would be irresponsible for me not to address what's been happening in Congo for decades. It would be irresponsible for me not to address what's happening in Haiti right at this moment. We have to talk about the occupation of the Western Sahara right now. We have to talk about what's going on in Ukraine right now. My job as an activist, as a scholar, as a truth teller, beautiful family, is to tell the truth about all of it. And I don't think it's accurate to say that the UN hasn't addressed Uyghurs or Rohingya or Darfur or Haiti or any of those things. That's just not accurate. I mean, that's, again, it's Googleable stuff. As a United States citizen, though, I feel a particular investment in the issue of Israel and Palestine. I feel one as a scholar. I'm a scholar of the Middle East. I'm an anthropologist who studies the Middle East. I study Jerusalem in particular. So I have that interest, but as a citizen, my tax dollars fund the Israeli occupation. I pay taxes. I've never paid for slay. And I suspect that if you were to do even a little bit of close research on the Martyrs program that you're alluding to, and not just listening to the talking points, you'd have a more I think a more nuanced understanding of it. But again, that seems to be beside the point, because I never advocated for the Palestinian Authority's Martyrs program. That's just like another straw man. What I said was, as a taxpayer, and I pay a decent amount, and as a taxpayer, yeah, I think about where my money goes. It's why I was outraged about Iraq. It's why I was outraged about Afghanistan. I understand what he's saying, but he talked for like 7 minutes and went all over the map. I want to respond to all of his points. Just hear me out. I promise I'll be done in the exact amount of time he was. All right, then we can end it. All right, thank you.
We don't need to end it. Oh. But you can conclude. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I'm going to conclude in the same amount of time. Otherwise, I can't answer 7 minutes of talking in 2 minutes.
Well, sometimes people can't.
They can't. I'm not that gifted. Okay. I'm not that gifted. Maybe I wouldn't be at Al Jazeera if I were, right? Kidding, Al Jazeera. And so for me, my focus, I think the world's focus should absolutely be on all of those places. Again, Israel should never be held to a higher standard. To hold Israel to a higher standard is unfair, unreasonable, and likely anti-Semitic. Okay, again, not the point I'm making. Israel also, though, cannot be held to a different or lower standard. And in politics, we often see the country that gets the focus is not the one. The reason we call the ICC, the International Criminal Court, often the ACC, the African Criminal Court, is because they tend to prosecute African leaders, not Western nations. Why? Because the powerful people, to your point, often are held unaccountable. I ain't talking about Israel, I'm talking about all of the West. This is a challenge, this is a problem, this is a crisis, this is what we have to deal with. So yes, we should think about all of those places, but we can't ignore what's happening in Israel either. And to the latter part, which is the last part of what I'm going to say, is I take issue with the fundamental question respectfully, the fundamental part of the question, which is when will Palestinians stop choosing violence? As if, as you're suggesting and saying it quite explicitly, that Palestinians are some naturally barbaric, intuitively uncivilized people who keep resorting to violence. Violence does not begin with Palestinians. No, he has said that. I mean, I've read his work, I've seen him, he said that literally, word for word. I'm not saying y'all are saying that, I'm talking about what my friend here said. He didn't say that? Are they uncivilized? Are they barbaric? The Arabs. The Palestinians. Then the Arabs. Okay. But here's the thing. No, but you all are laughing. But if I had asked that same question about Jewish people and he gave that same unequivocal answer, or about black people, or about anybody else, you'd be offended. Let's not pretend that that's okay. Palestinians and Arabs are not uncivilized. They're not barbaric. They are human beings like everybody else in this room. And to laugh at that response is deeply problematic. But I'm not going to linger there. My final point here is Palestinians are resisting occupation. They are resisting apartheid. They are resisting a genocide. And I may not agree with every tactic and strategy that they deploy, but fundamentally, I do support their right to resist. And if you want the resistance to stop, then as I said at the beginning, I say at the end, justice is always the precondition of peace. And what justice looks like, which is your question. Thank you, my friend. I knew you wanted to know.
Yeah, well, listen, what you call resistance, looting, raping, killing, kidnapping, destroying, suicide bombing is not an act of resistance. It is barbaric. It is barbaric. You need to call it for what it is.
I had the final word. I thought I was going to be able to get it. But yeah.
They're going to kick us out if we don't wrap it up. So what I would like you to do, I think you made your point pretty well, and I think you just made your point. So I would like to hear from you, because I haven't yet, what he answered is the first question, just in a...
No. I had three. I'm going there, but I would say... I'm doing it. I was literally done before you started talking about...
Can you give him like a couple minutes?
If you give me 45 seconds, I'll be done.
All right, 45 seconds. Let's go.
We don't have time. No,
give me 45 seconds.
So, again, there's a long history of bombings and terrorism. It does not begin with Palestinians in the region. And we could look at numerous acts of terrorism, some of whom have been conducted by literal heads of state of Israel, including Menachem Begin, including Yitzhak Rabin and others. We would have, if we look at the work of not just of the Haganah, but also of the Irgun and the Lehi, you see lots of terrorism, lots of bombing, lots of destruction, lots of unethical behavior, just as what we're seeing in Gaza. So no side is blameless here. And the final part of what I'm saying here ultimately is, as a non-Palestinian and as a non-Israeli, it's not up for me to decide what the final status issues are. It's not for me to decide what peace looks like. I leave it up to the people in the region. But whatever peace looks like, it should result in peace, safety, self-determination, dignity, and ultimately justice for Jews, for Christians, for Muslims, for Arabs, for everybody in the region. And if everybody doesn't have justice, then nobody does.
You forgot to say truth.
You got me.
Amen. Thank you.